What's going on, good people? It's your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor's favorite realtor. And I'm coming to you today with what is probably going to be the most extensive paperwork training class as a Georgia real estate agent that you're going to see in all of 2024. I went through a lot to prepare for this particular video. So if you are watching this right now, please be sure to give me a thumbs up to let me know that you appreciate me taking the time to go through pretty much every single scenario you're going to deal with as a residential Georgia agent. We're going to cover literally 4 different types of paperworks, and I am going to put the timestamps for each one. That way you can jump around depending on what exact transaction that you're doing. This video is not necessarily meant to take the place of you checking with your broker to make sure that you have all of the current paperworks, specific to your brokerage. But if you are in a pinch, your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor's favorite realtor got you covered. And if you are not currently an agent with Real Brokerage, I'd love to have a conversation on the value add with direct alignment with me as your sponsor. Please click the link in the first pinned comment to book a time on my calendar if you are interested in making the pivot to Real Brokerage as either a new or a veteran agent. I'm going to use a subject property, all right, for today. I'm also going to use myself as the client in the buyer agreement paperwork as well as the listing agreement paperwork. So we're going to use a subject property, but for your specific case, if you are really trying to get practice on how to do your paperwork, you can pick any home that's currently available on your MLS. But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to start with Zillow. But when we are actually doing the paperwork that we're going to cover today for all 4 categories, listing agreement, buyer brokerage representation agreement, rental agreement, we're going to cover all of that in today's video. But I want you to give yourself complete grace. This is a tutorial video that you may not necessarily catch everything on the first pass, but that's why I recorded it like this. That way you can rewind, play this at a slower speed so that you can catch everything that I'm saying, because I do paperwork all the time, but this may be your first foray into this. But I'm hoping and praying that you are not going to necessarily need a transaction coordinator because you're going to know how to do your paperwork. All right, so we're going to start here on the first place that you will need to go. In my case, we're going to start with Zillow, but as I mentioned, you would technically start in your MLS page. So we're going to start with Zillow first, but we're going to skip to where you're actually going to need to grab your paperwork and fill it out and send it off to your potential client, whether it's a listing or a buyer. But let's pick a subject property here. I'm just going to go to literally Zillow.com. All right, we're just going to pick a random home here on the MLS that's currently for sale. We're going to try this home that is in College Park here, 5075 Green Tree. So that's what we're going to use for our example for today. And we will start with a buyer's representation agreement. All right. So the reason we're going to start with that is because you may be watching this video and you are in severe need to write an offer right now on this beautiful property here that you are interested in putting an offer in for your client. So let's say it's this address, for example, 5075 Green Tree. I know that's the address that I want to write an offer on. So I am going to go to GMLS.com. That is where most Georgia agents, you have to be connected to Georgia MLS primarily, and then you might be connected to FMLS or one of the other FMLSs that are out there. So some of this information out just for privacy reasons because I have some current deals pending. And then I will go to transaction desk. So that's the first place that you're going to go once you log into the GMLS website, GAMLS.com website. And as soon as you've logged in there, that is going to bring you here to this page. And what you will do, and as I mentioned, I got it blurred out here in the middle just for privacy reasons, but what you will do is you will go to create a transaction. Once you decide to create a transaction, we're going to name it Marvin Test. This is going to be your file for this specific paperwork that you're doing for your buyer client. We'll call it Marvin's Test. The template that it's asking for, we're going to hit this one here that says submitting offers representing the buyer. Import data is always going to be Georgia MLS. And what that's going to do is it's going to take several steps that you normally would have to manually enter in out of the equation. It's going to do the work for you as long as you have the MLS number. So what I'm going to do is get the MLS number now for this home. And then we're going to get going here. We're going to pick an address in Atlanta, Georgia. That's going to be off of West Lake. And I just pulled that GMLS number from the MLS information. Again, you can search for that for your client either directly through Zillow or by typing the address into that your client is interested in, typing your address into the main GMLS page. Then you'll just copy and paste the MLS number, and it's asking if you want to be added as either the listing agent or selling agent, neither or both. If you are the one submitting an offer and this is not your listing, then you are the selling agent. So you'll tick that box there, and then you'll click create. And then we'll just give it a few seconds here. And what it's done is it's already imported the information on the MLS that it pulled down for the particular listing. And what you'll do for this section here is you won't worry about plugging all this information here. This is just for the transaction desk to keep that information on file. What you need to do is go straight to the paperwork. So all this information here is not necessarily relevant to submitting an offer. But what is relevant here is it's asking for to verify your information should be here as the selling agent because you did indicate that you are the selling agent. And then someone by the name of Kristen Lawson is the listing agent. Her brokerage is her brokerage here. And then my brokerage, of course, is Real Broker. And then what we'll do is we'll click next. And now it's time to add the forms. So this is going to be the important part here. So we'll click add to start adding forms into this particular bundle. So when you are writing an offer, you're going to always start with form F201. You can just type in 201 here and it will verify that that is the purchase and sale agreement. I like to go on the website to do the paperwork because that ensures that I always have up-to-date paperwork every time I do a transaction. Some individuals will download the entire PDF bundle. I don't personally recommend doing that. I recommend, since you do have GMLS membership, that you always do your paperwork online because that will ensure that you have the most up-to-date forms every time you write your offer. So the actual offer form is called a purchase and sale agreement, form F201. I will put these form numbers in the description of this video. So that's one we want to add to our basket. And the next form that you'll want to add in is what type of financing your buyer is using. If they've been pre-approved, the lender will tell you that your buyer is pre-approved either conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, but just for time purposes, we'll assume that it's either going to be an FHA buyer or a conventional buyer. So we're going to assume that this is a conventional buyer. The form number for conventional buyers is form F404, and that's the conventional loan contingency exhibit. So we'll add that to the basket. If you wanted to know what the form number is for FHA, it's form F407. So I'm going to leave those two. And you can search for like USDA, VA if you run across those types of scenarios. But again, it's several different types of financing. So I don't want this video to be too long. But the main forms that you're going to focus on are either FHA clients or conventional clients. So these are the respective form numbers for conventional, and it's form F407 for FHA. All right, the next form that we're going to add here is going to be form F510. And you don't have to put the F in front of it. You can just type in 510 and it will automatically find the form for you. This form is called the closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. If you are with Real Brokerage or any cloud-based brokerage, typically Real Brokerage, we do not hold earnest money. So you may be wondering, well, Marvin, who's going to be the person that holds earnest money? It's usually always going to be the closing attorney that you use, either that you do your research on and you pick one that you like in particular. I'm partial to a few of them. Some of my favorites here in Atlanta are Hawes Law Firm. Weissman is a good one. I've used these ones for a very long time, and I like the experience. Hawes primarily is my main closing attorney that I like working with, and then Weissman would be the second. But there are lots that are out there. You can do your own research or ask your broker if they have any recommendations. But this is the form that's going to be filled out by you when you're making the offer, indicating that your closing attorney is going to be the one that's going to hold the earnest money. All right, so we'll add that to the basket. And then form F511 is also a form that's required for the closing attorney to hold earnest money. So you'll add that to the basket as well. In both of these forms, you'll simply plug in the closing attorney's information twice, but you'll see it once we actually start the process. All right, and then lastly, if your home that you're interested in making an offer on is in a community that has an HOA, the listing agent should provide you with form 322. Okay, that form will come directly from the listing agent, and you have to include it in your packet when you create a bundle of an offer that you want to submit. So before you actually generate all this paperwork, if you know that your buyer if you know that your listing is in an HOA, it's a simple phone call to the listing agent to say, hey, my client and I are interested in submitting an offer, but I wanted to know if the home is in an HOA community. And if so, if you can provide me with the HOA disclosure, otherwise known as the community disclosure. I just want you to see what the form is called. It's Community Association Disclosure Exhibit. Again, you do not add this to the bundle as a fresh form. This form will come from the listing agent. So you'll call the listing agent. They will tell you how to find that form that they have already pre-filled, but it has to be included in your offer. And then lastly, another form that you'll get from the listing agent, if it applies, is form 301. That is the seller's property disclosure. This is where the seller explains to their knowledge the servicing that's been done on the home, the age of the roof, if they know it, if the home is on septic tank versus public sewer, if the home has a termite bond. It's all the little nuances of the property's ownership. And again, the seller may or may not have that information handy. And if they don't, then the listing agent will tell you that there is no seller's property disclosure, and you'll secondly ask them if they have form F302, which is the seller's disclosure of latent defects, seller's disclosure of latent defects. So you'll either get form F301 from the listing agent or form F302 if they have that available. They may tell you that the seller was the landlord and he or she never lived in the home, so they wouldn't have either form. But if they do have it, then that listing agent will tell you, here's where you can go to find it. Either they'll email it to you or tell you where to find it within the MLS website. But most listing agents are extremely helpful. So just ask them to email it to you if it's possible, but they'll tell you where to find it if they can't email it. Hey, if you've made it this far in the video and you are a real estate professional, consider partnering with me here at Real Brokerage. Pay nothing per month, get a fantastic split, and you have the opportunity to build a business through revenue share and stock purchases. Book a call at the link below in today's video, and I'm happy to have a conversation on why I was able to grow my business exponentially by moving my practice to Real Brokerage. All right, back to the video. All right, so again, these forms are not going to be anything that you put into this bundle as of now. These are going to be forms that you will get in PDF format from the listing agent. Form 322, if it applies, form 301, if it applies, and form form 302, if it applies. So 301 or 302 is going to be one of those two forms in that latter part. All right, so we've got pretty much everything that we need to go ahead and write this offer. But let's say hypothetically that you had just met this client and they were ready to go out of the gate, and you literally just met them. So you wanted to also make sure that you had a buyer's representation form relevant to your commissions on file. So in addition to this form here, these forms that we just talked about, you also will want to make sure that you have form F510, which is the buyer's brokerage agreement. This is the form that acknowledges that you as the listing agent are representing this buyer. So you're going to want to make sure that you have this form as well completed by your buyer. And then now that we are in the new NAR world, you're also going to want to make sure to include either Form 619, which is actually a form that's not out yet because we're not in August, which is when the new changes go into effect. But just remember to download, as of this recording, if you're watching this after August, you'll also need to include on your buyer's brokerage agreement, or buyer, which is the buyer representation agreement form, either F619 or F620, depending on the type of transaction, as well as pre-showing form F258. All right. Now, F258 is actually available, and that's the co-op commission agreement. This is a form relevant to how you are going to be paid in the event that the seller is not paying your full commission. So this is going to be a form that you're going to want to get with your broker on this one. I'm not going to talk about this in this particular video because this is going to be a nuanced situation, but F258 will be something that you will eventually need to know how to complete. So once we're kind of through August, I'll probably come back to this channel and do another video specific to the co-op commission agreement because the dust has not fully settled on that. But this form F258 is going to be a form that you'll need before you go show a property to a client. That's part of the new NAR world. All right, so we're not going to add this to this particular basket for all intents and purposes. We're going to keep it pushing here. All right, so now that I have everything to write an offer, I'll click add, and we've got everything here to get the ball rolling. So let's start with the initial offer. So for this offer here, it's very straightforward. What you'll do is you'll start from the top, and we'll put an offer date of today's date. A lot of the information has already been attached here for you. And for section B, if the property has an exhibit that indicates the legal description, the listing agent will let you know that. So you'll ask them, hey, is there an exhibit for the legal description? But most of the time, what you'll do is you'll simply click this box here, and then you will need to go to the county tax records for this particular property. It's a very easy Google search. If the home is in DeKalb, for example, you'll type in DeKalb tax office, property tax office. If it's in Gwinnett, you'll do Gwinnett property tax office. Wherever the property is, you'll look that home up through the tax records. And then, as you remember from your real estate license, you know how to plug in a legal description. So I'm not going to do that for time purposes for this video, but I do always suggest going to the tax office website for the respective property, either Gwinnett, Henry County, DeKalb, Fulton, wherever it is, and then simply typing the address in there on the search on that property tax website, and then you will see the legal description information here. And you will fill this out to the best of your ability according to what is listed on the legal description. So if there's a land lot number, you'll plug that in. If there's a district, you'll plug that in. If there's a phase section, you'll plug that in. If it's a lot, block, all that stuff, if it's there, you will plug that in. But I always suggest, if you don't have a mentor, you don't have anyone that you're working with, and you really need to get this paperwork done, once you've completed this, you'll simply run it by your broker, and they'll be able to make sure that it's completed to the best of your knowledge here before you send it off. Secondly, you're going to put your offer price. So for this home, we're going to give it its asking price. We're going to come in at asking, and I'm just doing that for sake of the video. What you'll want to do is, as far as an offer price that you want to make on a home, it really depends on you as the knowledge agent of this transaction. So if the comps show that that home is truly worth the listing price, and your buyer really, really wants that home, then it may be a good idea to offer asking price. If the comps show that that home is overpriced, or the home has been on the market for a very long time, let's say greater than 30 days, then you may want to come in a little bit lower. There's no math that I can tell you. Honestly, it's up to you as the professional to trust your gut. Look at the data as far as the comps are concerned. And if that home is sat on the market for some time, or when you're talking with the listing agent, because I always suggest that you call that agent before you make this offer to first find out if the home is still available. Because even though it says active, it's possible that that agent forgot to change the status. I can't tell you how many times I've run across that, where the agent forgot to change the status and the home is no longer available, and you went through all that work doing the paperwork and you can't even submit it because they've already accepted an offer. So I always suggest first calling the agent, seeing if the home is currently available, asking that agent this very important question: what are some intangibles that your seller is looking for in an offer that they will consider outside of price? So you're asking that to get an idea of what is going to take to get a deal done. If they tell you that the seller is very motivated, well, that tells me that's an indicator that I can come in under offer price and, maybe offer five or $10,000 under asking price, or build in or request some concessions as far as the seller contributing towards closing costs. But the listing agent will give you, if they're a fairly desperate listing agent, they're going to give you some information that's going to be super helpful for you to be able to make an informed decision on what to offer. But if you're wanting to know, well, Marvin, what should I offer? Look at the comps, look how long the home has been on the market, and then talk with the agent to ask them what are those factors that are most important to your client. And then ultimately, your buyer will tell you what they're comfortable spending. So I would work with the buyer and the buyer's lender to see, okay, what are you comfortable offering, and lean a little bit towards the lower end of what that buyer is comfortable offering. That way you look like the superhero that you are. But make sure that you check the comps on that home. Make sure you check how long it's been on the market, and make sure you reach out to that listing agent and ask them, why has this home been on the market so long? What are the things that have kept your seller from accepting an offer? What are some things that are important to them in an offer that they will accept, and you'll be able to go from there. But let's say hypothetically that this home's been on the market 45 days. So I'm going to offer, it's listed for 389, but I'm going to offer, because the comps don't look too hot for this particular price, I feel like this price is overpriced. I'm going to offer 369 instead of 389. Okay. And so it's $20,000 off of asking. And I want the seller to cover all my closing costs. So general rule of thumb is, if you want to pretty much ensure that the majority of your buyer's closing costs are going to be covered, the general rule of thumb is to offer or to request around 3% towards closing. So if I get my trusty calculator out and I take 369,000 times 3%, that's going to come out to roughly 11,070 that I'm going to ask that this seller cover in closing costs. So that'll pretty much ensure that your buyer is not going to have to come out of anything as it relates to closing costs. They're still going to have a down payment, of course, but closing costs are usually about 3% of the sales price. Now, the closing date, of course, you typically will want to put 30 days from today's date, but if it's a weekend, then you'll want to put the following, Monday. So 30 days from the 14th of July is August 14th. So that's a Wednesday. So I'm going to put that 30 days is the expected closing date. If the lender tells you that they can close sooner, then that's definitely going to make your offer more appealing. And if they tell you they need the full 30 days, usually if it's an FHA or if there's going to be some down payment assistance, they're going to want to take that full 30 days. So I always just put 30 days from the date I'm writing the offer, assuming that that 30th day is not a Saturday or a Sunday. If it is, then I'll push it to a Monday. Now, I usually have my buyers take possession upon closing. All right. In some cases, the seller may need some additional days after it's closed, maybe to get their stuff out of the home. And if that is the case, then that seller will typically ask for you to add Form F-219, which is the temporary occupancy agreement for seller after closing. So what that essentially means is that you all will be closing, the ownership will change hands. You will now be the owner of that property, or your client will be the owner of that property, but the seller will still remain in the home for 5 days after closing, 10 days after closing, whatever you and the you and the listing agent and your respective clients agree upon. But I typically will say just select upon closing. All right. Closing law firm is going to be whatever law firm you decide to work with. Like I said, I like Hawes Law Firm in Suwanee, Georgia. So I'll put Hawes Law Firm, and then you can put whatever. Again, the seller's agent may tell you that they have a preferred closing attorney, but for all offers that are written, you and your buyer can determine whatever closing attorney you all want to use for this process. It's completely up to the buyer who they'd like to use. But if the listing agent says they have a preferred attorney and you want your offer to be as strong as possible, well, you may decide, if your buyer really doesn't care one way or the other, but maybe you as the buyer's agent, you have a closing attorney you normally like using, it may strengthen your offer even more if you decide to acquiesce and use the seller's preferred closing attorney. Sometimes individual sellers may have already done title or whatever the case may be, so they may have a preferred attorney they want you to use, but you don't have to use them. You and your buyer can use whatever closing attorney you'd like, and it's up to the seller whether they'll accept that offer. Now, again, the holder of the earnest money is again going to be your law firm if you are at a brokerage that does not hold earnest money. So here at Real Brokerage, we don't hold earnest money. I like the closing attorney to handle all that. I don't personally like the brokerage to be responsible for that. But if you're at another brokerage where they do hold earnest money, then you'll put your brokerage's name here. And then you will select at what point you're going to deliver the earnest money. So I typically will select option B, and earnest money is usually going to be 1% of the sales price. That's usually what most sellers want to see in an offer that they'll accept. So in this case, for this offer, that'd be roughly $36.99. If my math is good, yeah. So it'd be about $3,699 down. And I typically will indicate that the earnest money will be deposited by my client within 3 days of binding agreement date. Secondly, and if you're getting value from this, please hit the like button. This is going to be a long video. So as I mentioned, I'm going to put timestamps on everything so that you can catch up at your leisure. Now, next section here, inspection and due diligence. I typically put a due diligence period of about 5 days, because you don't want the due diligence period. And due diligence means the period of time that your buyer can cancel and terminate the contract for any reason or no reason at all and get 100% of their $3,699 back. Okay. So I don't like to put more than 5 days because that weakens my offer. Now, if the home has, it's in not the best condition, you may need longer than 5 days if you're working with an investor client, for example, or in an area where they need to do radon testing or some other kind of testing. But your standard home inspector will get the job done within 5 days. If you need a good home inspector that I strongly recommend, I will leave his information in the description of this video. But typically, most inspection companies, and again, you can get on the phone with them before you submit this offer, a good inspector that either your buyer provides or maybe one that you've worked with. Most agents tend to ask the buyer to find their own home inspector. And if that's what you decide to do, if you don't have one that you typically work with, that's perfectly fine. But you'll ask that inspector, hey, we're looking to put an offer in on this property. How soon, hypothetically, can you come out to this home if our offer is accepted? And they'll let you know, oh yeah, we can be out there a day after, we don't have anything going on. Or if they say they can only come out, within 7 days, something like that, then you'll put that respectively. So I like to put 5 days because, again, the inspectors that I use, they can get out there within 5 days. Option B here, which is option payment for due diligence period. I don't put these in my offers any longer. When we were in a crazy market during the pandemic, option payment simply means if you wanted to sweeten your offer even more, you're offering that seller non-refundable money, if just for the option to be able to go under contract for the home. So this is essentially money that your buyer would offer just for the convenience of getting their offer accepted. If for whatever reason you terminate, you're still saying, hey, I'm going to get my earnest money back, but for your time and for giving me the option of going through this due diligence period, here's $1,000, here's $500, whatever the case is. I don't do these anymore. That was when the market was crazy. But if the market ever comes back, well, this is the section where, again, if you want to strengthen your offer as much as possible, then that's where you would plug in that information there. As far as how much your buyer is willing to offer for the option to go through the due diligence, and make it worth their while to accept your offer. All right, lead-based paint here, exhibit. If the tax records show that the home was built before 1978, then their seller's agent should provide you with Form F316, which is the lead-based paint exhibit. But if the home was built after 1978, then this form is not required. So if it was built after 1978, then you will check this box here that says the home was not built prior to 1978. All right, so we're going to speed through the majority of this section here. Now, your information, according to when you plugged in the MLS information, it automatically pulls up your brokerage and the listing agent's brokerage. But you're not going to fill out this side. You're only going to fill out your side as the buyer's broker. So I'm representing the buyer as a client. And then material relationship disclosure. If there is any special situations, like you're related to the client making the offer, if the listing agent is married to the seller's agent, any material relationship on either side is what's going to be plugged in here. So if the seller's agent also owns the LLC that owns the property or something like that, any material relationship, that's going to go here, and that information would be in the MLS information, or the listing agent will provide that to you. Time limit of the offer, I like to put midnight, within 3 days of writing the offer. So I'll put 12 o'clock a.m. And I typically write my offers with an expiration date of 3 days or less. So you could put 48 hours, but I like to give it at least 3 days. So let's just say on 7/17 at 12 midnight, this offer will expire. But hopefully you'll have this offer accepted prior to that time. The rest of this information are disclosures specific to Georgia. I'll let you read that at your leisure. Now, on this section here is where you will indicate all of the other documents that are going to be attached to this offer. So, as I mentioned earlier, Form F510 will have to be included in the offer. If this is a conventional loan, then Form F404, which I mentioned, which we'll go to how to fill that out as well. The home was not built prior to 1978, so you don't need Form F316. The only other forms here that you'll need are, if it applies, is the conventional loan. That's always got to be included if it's a conventional loan, or FHA. You'll check whichever box that is. The closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. And then if the home is in a HOA, then Form F32 is going to be what's indicated here that you are including. And then lastly, if any of these other sections apply, then you'll pull that respective form. But again, these are all kind of nuanced situations that's going to be outside of the scope of this video. So get with your broker if you need any help, if it's any of these other additional forms that apply. And then for other, I always like to add in the pre-approval letter. I don't have a pre-approval because this is a test video, of course, where we're just going through a training. But when I submit my offers, I strongly suggest that you include your buyer's pre-approval letter, and that is a current pre-approval letter, something that's dated within the last 30 days, because your potential seller's agent is going to reach out, a good seller's agent, before they accept your client's offer, you and your client's offer. A good seller's agent is going to reach out to the lender to make sure that your buyer is fully pre-approved. They've done their due diligence, and it's a very tight file. They're gonna reach out to your lender, and your lender, if they have a good relationship with you as the buyer's agent, they'll give you a heads up that, hey, I think we're going to get an accepted offer because the seller's agent did reach out to me asking about our client. So that's always going to be a good idea, to include a current pre-approval letter that shows an amount at or greater than the amount of the offer that you're getting ready to submit. So that's very important, that it includes an amount that is at or greater than the amount that you're writing the offer in, not less, because that means the seller and the seller's agent is going to say, well, they're not even pre-approved for the amount that you're making an offer on. So how are you going to make up that difference. So a good lender will draft a pre-approval letter in the amount that you need them to draft it for. So if you're looking to make an offer of 360, for example, then they can actually jump in and give you a pre-approval for 360, even though they know and you know that your client is pre-approved up to 400,000. But a good lender, my team of lenders, they handle their business and they always jump in and make it, do what it do. All right. So special stipulations is an important section here where you'll plug in any special stipulations as it suggests. So let's say hypothetically, in addition to asking for $11,000 towards closing cost, you want the seller to pay for a home warranty for your buyer client. That way, they don't have to worry for the first year about paying for the home warranty premium on the property that they buy. So there's a lot of good home warranty companies out there. There's 2-10, there's America's Preferred Home Warranty. There's a lot of them that I utilize. In for a standard single family home, it's going to cost about $700 to give your buyer client the premium package of a home warranty. With most of these companies, it'll cost $700 for that year for the initial premium, and the buyer will be responsible. If they want to keep that home warranty going, they'll be responsible for paying the premium after that year. But I always like to include that in my offers, where I'll say all parties agree that seller will contribute an additional $700 towards home warranty of buyer's choosing. Did I spell that right? Additional. All right. So I always throw that in there. I also like to indicate that all parties agree that due diligence period is in business days only. The reason I do that is because if you remember at the beginning of the offer, I said 5 business days or 5 days is the due diligence period. 5 days is the amount of time that my client can terminate their contract and get their earnest money back for any reason or no reason at all. Here in Georgia, we're able to do that. Every state's different, but here in Georgia, you can write a due diligence period where your client can terminate the contract for any reason at all and get their money back. All right, or no reason at all. So if I write that offer in, and let's say I say 5 days, but I don't specify here that it's business days, well, technically, if I write the offer and it's accepted on a Friday and my inspector doesn't work on weekends, well, now I've lost 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, that the due diligence can be done as far as an inspection is concerned on the home. So I always like to indicate and write my contracts to say that all parties agree that the due diligence period is in business days only. Just a suggestion, but you do whatever you choose to do with that. All right, and so on this section here, and I'll show you about all that in a moment here. But down here is where all my information is, my license number, all that jazz. The other agent's information, their license number, and we're pretty much done with this form. We're going to add signatures at the end. So what we're going to do is we're pretty much done with the offer, but just to recap here, you want to make sure that everything relevant is filled in. So we plugged in the offer date. The information on the property should automatically populate when you enter in the MLS number, the offer, the concessions that are being requested, the closing date, the closing attorney, the holder of the earnest money. See, I left that off because I'm doing this training video here and I forgot to leave that to fill that in. So Hawes Law Firm. All right. That's there. So that's filled in. Both of these have to be filled in, a closing attorney and the holder of the earnest money. And if it is the closing attorney, which again, my brokerage does not hold earnest money, so I put the closing attorney for both things, and then the closing attorney's telephone number, the amount of earnest money that your buyer is going to contribute. 1% is the norm, so I put that here. And within 3 days from the binding agreement date. Binding agreement date simply means when all parties have signed off on the offer and the offer is official, it's bound by the last person to sign off on or review it. So it'll be either you or the listing agent. Typically, the listing agent will be the one that binds it, and they will. And all binding means is that we now have a live contract. So the binding information is going to go down here, and it's going to be filled in by either you or the listing agent. So now we know a day after that official date that's put here is when the clock starts for all intents and purposes. All right. So we're going to save this, and we're done with that. Now we're going to go into the conventional loan contingency, which is again assuming that this client is a conventional loan. So one thing that I wanted to show you guys that I forgot to do here, let's go back to the offer. So on the offer, going back into there, down here on this page, right here, the exhibits and addenda, for every additional document that goes with your offer, you have to give each document that you're adding to this offer an exhibit letter. So, for example, the conventional loan contingency, since we're going to work on that first, we're going to give that the letter A. The next document that we'll fill in, let's say it's the HOA form, we'll give that letter B. The closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money, we'll give that one letter C. And if there are any other documents that you add to your specific offer, then you'll give it a letter D, E, F, whatever the case is. So I'm going to take a picture just to make sure I remember these letters that we're using here for this particular video. But every form that you're including in your offer, which is going to be this form F201, which is the actual offer that we're filling in, form F404, form F322, and form F510, has to be given a letter at the top of each exhibit. And you're going to see what I'm talking about here in a moment. All right, so let's go to the conventional loan contingency. And that one we gave letter A. So I'm going to put A up here as the exhibit letter. Now, as far as the information that goes in here, the lender and you are going to be the ones that complete this information, or you can pretty much fill this information in from the data on the pre-approval letter. But if you don't have that pre-approval letter or you don't quite understand it, just ask the lender to help you fill out this section here. Okay. For most cases, it's always just going to be letter A that you fill in here. If the home is a conventional loan, then what does that mean? That means that your buyer is putting down 5%. So 5% from 100 is going to be 90, what is it, 95? And the amount of time is going to be 30 years in most cases, unless it's a 15-year loan. So the purchase price is going to be for the loan, they're going to get a loan for 95% of the purchase price because they're putting 5% down, 30 years. And then the interest rate that they're going to pay, this is going to come directly from the lender. All right. And got a call coming in here. All right. This is going to be plugged in here. So that lender will give you the current interest rate that they are offering. So the lender will tell you what to plug in there. And if it's a fixed rate loan, please God, let it be a fixed rate loan and no one's still using adjustable rate mortgages or interest only mortgages, because those are terrible loan products. But it's hopefully going to be a fixed loan. And again, they'll tell you what to put here as far as the interest rate. The approved mortgage lenders is always going to be the lender that you're currently working with. So one of the lenders that I use is One Real Mortgage. They are a great team that I utilize here as an agent at Real Broker. And then the length of the financing contingency period, I like to write 24 days because I want to give the lender the most amount of time possible to, get my buyer done and through the pre-approval, the underwriting process. And as part of the counter, the listing agent might say, well, we need your seller to be done with financing underwriting, in 15 days or 16 days. I always send it off as an offer with 24 days, But if as part of the counter, the listing agent says, well, we want this to be a lower number of days because that's too long for your client to, be in underwriting, and if the financing doesn't go through, well, they get their earnest money back. But if your lender tells you, or if your buyer's lender tells you that they can get it done in 14 days, well, then as part of the counter, you can change it to 14 days. Now, the amount of time for the buyer to request a reduction in sales price based on low appraisal, I also like to put 24 days here as well, meaning that when the appraisal is done, if the home comes in less than the amount that we offered, which was 369,000, well, we can terminate our contract within this period of time if me as the buyer's agent with my buyer client and the listing agent and the seller don't agree to go ahead and lower that price down to what the appraised value is. Most sellers know, that the appraisal is a third party that's uninvolved in the transaction. So they will say, okay, this is what the home is worth, and it's up to you and your buyer whether you decide to, pay the difference out of pocket. But usually the seller will, once they see the appraisal, they'll go ahead and lower the value to what the appraised value is, or you all will come to an agreement. But if you don't come to an agreement, you and your buyer, for all intents and purposes, don't quote me, check with your broker, but you can walk away if you all don't come to an agreement on the value being at what the appraised value is. But again, that's getting in the weeds. Just check with your broker on that if you have any questions, or your team lead. All right. So we're pretty much done with the financing contingency. So we'll add signatures for that as well at the end. So we'll save and exit on that one. Closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. We'll put that here. So that's going to be, I believe, the letter that we did for that one was C, but I'm just going to double check here. All right, closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. Yes, so that's letter C. So we'll put C at the top up here. All the information is already populated here for your client. The alternate holder section here that's blank, you will put a secondary closing attorney that you'd like to use. Like I said, if for whatever reason, Hawes Law Firm, who's my preferred closing attorney, isn't able to hold the earnest money, then I might put, Weissman, which is another popular closing attorney here in Atlanta. And then I will put, or you as the agent will put, your closing attorney information here. So Hawes Law Firm, and you could just Google their address, phone number, fax number, and email. And then you're pretty much done with this form. So we'll save exit that one. All right. And then this form here, F511, which is the agreement of the closing attorney to serve. This isn't going to be signed by your client. This is a form for you. And this is information that you'll plug in your buyer's name. And that's pretty much all that needs to be plugged in here is just the buyer's information. And then you will send this off to the closing attorney, and they will be the ones to sign this and send this back to you as the buyer's agent. So this is just for you, where you plug in the law firm name again, Hawes Law Firm. You'll put your buyer's name. We'll say Marvin in the last name. And then the seller's name is what you'll put there once you obtain that information. And on all the other information is already pre-populated here. You'll put the buyer's name, address, phone number here, and email if you have it. And then nobody signs this. This is just a form that you'll hold on to once your offer is accepted, and you'll send it off to the closing attorney. All right. So now we've got all of the forms necessary to submit an offer. So what I like to do is click the first form here, which is the official offer. And now we're ready to ask for signatures. So part of your GMLS membership, it gives you the ability to utilize a signature service similar to DocuSign without paying for DocuSign. Here at Real, we also have a service that's included with our alignment here at Real Brokerage. But if you are paying for DocuSign, you really don't need to do that as a realtor, because if you are part of GMLS, you do actually have access to Authentisign, which is identical to DocuSign. So we're going to send this to Authentisign. I've been talking for 50 minutes, y'all. That's 51 minutes to be exact. I hope you are getting value from this. And I know we're taking quite a while, but the forms are updating regularly. So I want to make sure you have all the information that you need. All right. So what we're going to do first is add all of the documents necessary to this bundle here that we're going to send off to our client. So again, purchase and sale agreement is already here. The loan contingency, we want to add that. And let me show y'all how I got there. So I went to docs here, and then I went to add document or form. So I added already form F404, and then form F511. Remember, F510, I always get these two confused, but the one that I just mentioned does not require a client signature, is what you don't have to add to this bundle. And I believe it's form F510 that doesn't need to be signed by anybody. Yeah, form F5, I'm sorry, form F511 doesn't need to be signed by anyone, but form F510 does need to be signed. So we'll remove form F511 here in a moment. And then what you can have done as well is you will need to, of course, have your buyer brokerage agreement completed. So we'll add that in as well. And then click close. All right. So we'll go through and make sure everything that I've added to the bundle is here and still intact and looks exactly as I typed it up. Of course, this is the official offer. This is the conventional loan contingency. This is the form F511 here that I need to remove. So if I need to remove a form, I just click it here. And then I will click the option that says remove file. So that removes it from the bundle here. All right. So let's go back to this one here, the main form. All right. So if we go back to, and I just want y'all to see what all the forms look like. All right. So starting from the original offer, I want to go to signers, and the individuals that are going to sign this form is only going to be me and my client. The listing agent will take care of their client's side of the paperwork. You're not going to send this off to them. Once you have gotten yourself to sign it and your client to sign it, you'll download it as a PDF, a complete PDF file with all of the documents. And I'll show you how to do that probably on another video, because we've been at this for quite a while. But what you'll want to make sure that you do, because you're going to need to sign this form. So I'm going to add myself as a signee. I'll click save. So now I'm added on the file. It's going to give me an error message here about these other sections, but you just click assign signature blocks. And you'll do this on at another time. And then if you needed to add a participant, which is going to be your buyer, you'll click add new. We'll call this person LeBron J. I forget his middle name, but we'll do LeBron James. And we'll say that his email is LeBron@Nike.com. All right. And all the other sections here are not necessary to be completed. You just click save. Again, it's going to give you this error message. You just skip through this and assign signature blocks. Now you've got yourself and LeBron James, and that'd be pretty sweet to be a client, an agent for LeBron James, right? All right, so now we're going to add the initials and signature blocks. So I like to start first with the client. So what I'll do is I'll click on their name. I'll click tools first, I'm sorry, and then I'll click on their name here in the Dropbox section. His name is already here. So the places where the client is going to need to complete or initial is going to be as follows. So this section here is where they're going to need to complete the buyer's initials on the first page. So I will click the initial button and then I drag it down there. Okay. So that's the first place that they're going to need to initial. The next place they need to initial is going to be the bottom of this form here. So I'm going to drag the signature tab. I'm going to drag that here. The date already is here when I drag the signature, so I just put that date there, right there. All this other information here, you really don't need to worry about that for right now. I need to sign this part as well as the agent. So I will click the drop down box to change it to myself. And then I will sign right here. And then I will drag the date over here. And then that's all parties on my end that needs to sign. All the other side, again, you'll save this as a PDF once everybody on your side has signed, you and your client, and you'll save it as a PDF and then email it to the client. This binding agreement date, again, this is not going to be filled out until everybody has signed this. So if your offer is accepted, then the listing agent's going to have their seller sign here. The listing agent's going to sign here, and the listing agent's going to be the one to bind the document. All right. I had to cut this alarm off. All right. Now we're going to scroll down to the financing contingency. This also requires only me and my client's signature. So I was already here on myself. So I'm going to drag a signature line here. And then I do need to fill in my realtor board membership. So whoever I'm a part of or whoever you're a part of, you just drag the text line here. And when you get the form for you to sign, that's where you'll fill in whether you're with ARA, NAR, whomever you're with, because you do need to put your board membership information here, because hopefully you are a part of the realtor board, because that's probably the only way you got this paperwork. All right, now LeBron needs to sign here. So I'm going to drag the signature line for him here. And we're done with this form. So now we're going to the closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money. Remember, make sure you have this filled in with the closing attorney's information. You can Google that and get that information. Your buyer will need to initial. So we'll go back here to the initial button and we'll drag that here. And we're done with that page. And then, of course, for the buyer brokerage engagement agreement, I'm going to cover that in the second part of this very extensive training video. So we're going to come back to this form in a little bit. All right. So once we're ready to send it off to your client to sign, you'll click next. And then now, as soon as I hit send, it's going to go off to my client, LeBron, to sign. And it will automatically navigate them to everything that they need to sign. And then it'll come back to you for you to sign. And now you can download the contract as a complete PDF and send it off to your listing agent at the email or way that they request to receive all offers. Okay. So we're pretty much done with how to write an offer. I know that took quite a while here, but it's very, very important. So I didn't want to miss a step in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So that's why we did it like this. So now we're going to go back to how to write a listing agreement. All right. So it's very straightforward as far as how to write a listing agreement. And again, I'm going to put timestamps on everything. So don't worry. So what you'll do is you'll go back to GMLS.com. You'll log in. Then you'll go back to Transaction Desk. And what that'll do here, let me share that screen here. All right. So we're back on Transaction Desk. Okay. So we'll go to create a transaction. Again, we're going to call this Marvin listing test. All right. And it's going to say here for this particular video, we're working with sellers. That's the template that we're going to use. All right. We're going to import data from Georgia MLS. Now, of course, if this is a brand new listing, whereas this is a home that you just picked up from a client that maybe bought the home some years ago and they're ready to sell, what I like to do, again, to save myself the trouble of having to go through this part and manually entering in information all over again, is I like to go and find the listing information in GAMLS records. So for example, what I would do, I'm going to open up another tab here. All right, let me do this. Hold on. All right, so what I like to do is type in the address on the main GAMLS page. So here's the main GMLS page, and I'll type in the address, 240 West Lake. Sometimes it gets real tricky when you type in the full address, so I'll just do West Lake instead of Westlake Avenue, and I want to see if it pulls up. Yeah, it still didn't pull up. All right, let me try it again. I'm gonna try. I might have to try another address that doesn't have all of the different acronyms here in it, like the West and all that stuff. Okay, so we'll do 3723 Milford. So I'm going to type in 3723 Milford, random home that's for sale. Okay. So this is great because, excuse me, this is great because it is currently for sale here. And the reason I know that is because I look at the status. So this status said expired. So that means that it was listed and it was expired. This one here says it was withdrawn. This one said it was sold. So this is probably when the current owner here purchased it either here or here, probably here, because this amount is closer to this amount. So what that tells me is let's say I'm the person about to list this home, what I would like to typically do is I'll grab the old MLS number from the previous listing that they purchased it from, if they used another agent to buy the home. And then I will copy that information and then go back to my transaction desk. And then I'll enter that information here, the old listing information. And then I'll click add me as the listing agent. And then I'll click create. And what that does is it saves me from having to fill all this information out here. It's just going and finding the old MLS information from who they bought it from if the home was listed on the MLS in the past. And then that saves you from having to fill all this information out here, and it'll add the auto population information into the paperwork for the listing agreement. So this is the listing agreement section. We're at the hour mark. So I'm going to keep that in mind for time purposes. All right. So because this is an old listing, it's got a few different pieces of information here, but what it should have is my name as the new listing agent, my broker as the listing broker, and that should be it if this is a new listing. Of course, because we just pulled an old listing, it's got other additional individuals' names here, but it should just be my name as the listing agent and my brokerage as the listing broker. So I'll click next. And one more thing as well here is if you wanted to add your client as well as a contact, you can do that here. So you would just click add, and then you would put your seller's information as a new transaction contact because they're going to need to sign off on a part of this. But we'll click next. All right. So just like last time with the buyer's offer, so with a listing agreement, the form numbers for those are going to be as follows. And I wrote it down here in my trusty notepad. It's not as many forms, thank God, for a listing agreement. But the main one you're going to need is Form F101. That is the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement. All right. Form 301, which is the property disclosure. If your seller had actually lived in the home, I always suggest that they go ahead and complete this because it's very important for the potential buyer of the property that they disclose everything that they do know about the home if they lived in the home. All right. If there's an HOA, you'll also need Form F322. But again, you don't have to add the F. You can just type in the numbers here. So we'll add that to the grocery basket. And then you'll also need an affiliated business disclosure. If your broker requires an affiliated business disclosure, they will provide you with that form because that's not going to be a form that's here in the GAR form. So you'll just ask your broker, where can I find the affiliated business disclosure? And that's a form that you'll need to upload to your bundle and add signatures to through Authentisign, like I showed you before. All right, so the only ones that you're going to need, again, if it applies, is Form F-101, F-301, F-322. If it's a HOA community, you'll need your affiliated business disclosure. And if they require an F-302, that's also another form that you can add in here as well. All right. So we'll add the 3 forms here that we do know are going to be required, and we'll start with the seller brokerage agreement. All right. So this is the address again. That's here in section A. That's already pre-populated. Legal description is, and you can go on the county website, county property tax website for your respective county to fill in all this information here. Listing price, again, is going to be based on whatever listing price when you run a CMA for your potential seller client. You'll let them know what the data shows in that area. And I've already done a video on how to run a CMA. So you'll just be on the lookout for that, or check the description of this video, because it'll probably be in the description of the video as far as how to run a CMA. And once again, with listing prices, and this is really important, is that you have to trust yourself as the professional. Okay. What I mean is if the seller is unsure what they want to list the home for, try to gather as much information as you can on any outstanding loans that they have on the property, because the difference between the sales price and the loan price that loan balance they still owe the bank, minus your commission and taxes, is what that seller is going to net and walk away with. So many closing attorneys offer a complimentary net sheet service, and it'll give you a rough estimate that you can provide to your seller on what they will walk away with based on how much they owe the bank, the sales price, your commission, and property, potential taxes and whatnot. Okay. Prorated taxes, because the buyer is going to pay, as of course, their portion of the prorated, but the seller is going to be responsible for all the days as far as taxes are concerned leading up to the day of closing. Okay. So again, once you've run a CMA and you have an idea of what that home could sell for, very rarely will I go for the top of what the CMA tells me. If I try to stay in the pocket, I try to stay in the middle, unless there's some extenuating circumstance where the top sales in the area didn't have certain updates that my seller has. Well, then I might price it a lot closer to that top. But usually I tend to stay somewhere in the middle if I know that, one, the client needs to sell that home very quickly, and two, they have some things going on with the home, normal wear and tear that's going on in the home, that I know that they're not going to get the top of the market in their price range. So again, these are tough conversations that, if you are confident in your data points that you're showing to them, and that you walk through to them why that home in their neighborhood sold 3 months ago for 500,000, and they're wanting to know why you're wanting to list their home for 490,000. Well, what you'll do is you'll just kind of walk through, well, this is a comparable property, but this home had a basement where your home doesn't have a basement. So that's why I priced your home at around 490, for example, or this home that sold for 500 had an extra bedroom, or this home had updates in the home that your client doesn't have, things of that nature. You be kind and friendly, but be real with them so they understand why you arrived at the price that you arrived at. And at the end of the day, they might still tell you, I want to list this home for 500,000 because that's what my neighbor got. And at the end of the day, you got to do what they tell you to do. But at least make sure you do your part in letting them know that the reason you came up with the price you came up with was based on certain factors specific to their home, and your best estimation of the potential sales price for your home. That's all I kind of tell them. But again, usually I don't get pushback, but if I do, then I just put what they tell me to put, letting them know that I've done my part, and if we don't get this, then we may have to revisit a price adjustment. Commencement date of the agreement, you can put whatever day they'd like to start marketing the property. So if it's tomorrow, for example, you'll put tomorrow. If and the ending date of the agreement, I like to put. Some people put 6 months for the ending date of the listing arrangement. I like to put 90 days personally. Hopefully you sold that home well before that, but 90 days is what I tend to put. So July, August, September, let's just say middle of October. So it's a little over 90 days. Then marketing, broker agrees to file this listing with the following multiple listing services. So if your property is in what's called an FMLS compulsory area, then you have to put the listing on FMLS. Get with your broker to find out, if have them provide you with a map of the FMLS compulsory area. If you are an Atlanta-based agent, of course, if you're down in Savannah or other places, this doesn't apply. But you will ask your broker if there are any other MLSs that apply to the area that you service in Georgia. Again, assuming that you're here in Atlanta or in and around Atlanta, it'll always be FMLS and GAMLS. Okay, there's usually going to be those two. Again, assuming that your property is in an FMLS compulsory area. You can Google that word FMLS compulsory area and you'll get a map of what covers the FMLS area. And if your property is in that area, then you know you need to put that as well on here. All right. Now, marketing commencement date. I always like to put again the next day if I'm going to put it up the next day. Hopefully, I've already arranged to take pictures. So let's say instead of the next day, let's say instead we'll do it at the end of the week. All right. And we'll also do the commencement, the list price, commencement, all that the end of the week as well. All right. And seller shall have the right upon notice of broker to move this date back or up no more than, I like to put no more than, you can do, I believe, as long as 21 days, but I like to do 14 days that they have the ability to change the dates either forward or backwards. All right. Compensation to you. I know that this is a tricky area now in this new NAR world that we're in, but I'm just assuming that we're operating as normal. So let's just say hypothetically that you agree to sell the home for 6%. Okay. It's always been negotiable. It always will be negotiable. But just for this video, let's just say you offer to sell the home for 6% of the sales price. Now, out of that 6%, or it could be 5, it could be 4, whatever the case is. Now, out of that 6%, remember that if the seller is in agreement with this, then you can offer optional compensation to the buyer's broker. It's now no longer a requirement. As of this recording, the NAR rules have changed, so the seller does not necessarily have to pay the buyer's agent's compensation. But I would strongly encourage them to consider doing that, because that's going to completely remove a demographic of individuals that cannot afford to pay closing costs, down payment, and the buyer's commission. So I would, again, being a good steward and a good real estate agent, inform them that yes, it is optional now, but I would strongly advise, excuse me, I would strongly advise, that we do still offer some type of compensation to the buyer's agent. So let's just say hypothetically, we split it down the middle, and you offer 3% to whatever buyer's agent, is giving, what the buyer's agent is giving. So this section here, seller hereby approves the following compensation, if any, being paid to the buyer's broker by either the seller or the seller's broker, out of the compensation being paid to the seller's broker, or the seller and seller's broker. So what this essentially means is, and this is a conversation you'll have with the listing agent, is because this information, as far as what you'll be paid, potentially be paid as a buyer's agent, this is just for buyer's agents watching this, is now no longer going to be posted on any MLS. So you'll have to reach out to the agent directly and ask them if there is compensation. And if so, they will tell you something like, okay, well, we'll pay 1% to you as the buyer's agent. Well, if your fee to your buyer is 3% as part of your buyer brokerage arrangement, that means that 2% difference, either you're going to take only 1%, or you hopefully had a good conversation with your buyer to let them know that typically, I always like to use the word typically, your compensation comes from the seller or the seller's agent. But in the event that they are not covering your full fee to represent them as the buyer's agent, that is going to be that 2% or 1% or whatever the difference is between what they're paying or not paying. That difference is going to be part of the buyer's closing cost. Okay. So I know that if you have a VA client as a buyer, there's some temporary, change to where typically VA folks don't pay anything, but they now in this current NAR world that we're living in, even VA clients are now able to pay a buyer's representative. So again, that's a whole nother conversation for another video. But just assuming that the seller's agent says, I only want to pay a buyer's agent 1%. Well, that's what you're going to put here. And that means that you will get 5%, hypothetically, if you and the seller agree to pay 1% to a buyer's broker. Okay. So you'll make sure if it's going to come from the seller directly or if it's going to come from you and you're going to say, well, you know what, out of my 6, I'll pay the buyer's agent. And again, that's what I'm doing. I'm strongly advising them to do it, but if they say they don't want to do it, then I will typically, through my compensation, just because I believe in doing others how I'd like to be done, I will take a portion of what I get. Let's say in this case it's 5%, and then I'll pay 1% to a buyer's broker, meaning that I will walk away with the difference of 4%. All right. This section here is separate compensation on lease. That's something that's outside of the scope of this video. So don't worry about that for right now. The protected period, I like to put 120 days, meaning that if for whatever reason you and the seller decide to terminate, but you had secured a contract, and it's a lot of stuff. Get with your broker on that. I'll just tell you that. But I like to put 120 days here to protect myself. Let me just say that because I don't want to say anything incorrect on this recording. But this is essentially a length of time where your commission is protected in the event anything goes south with the listing and they decide to use someone else who sells the home to an individual that had actually seen the home when you were representing them as the listing agent. It protects your commission for a period of 120 days. All right. Now, the agency brokerage relationship not affected by a broker is always going to be, let me see here, not offered by a broker is always going to be a sub agency. All right. And seller does or does not consent to the broker acting in dual agency capacity. This simply means that if let's say you're with Real Broker and you're the listing agent, and you're basically making sure that your seller is okay if the person making an offer representing the buyer's agent is also with Real Broker, or you're with KW, the other person with KW, vice versa, blase blase, that the seller does or does not consent. So most of my sellers don't care if the buyer's agent is also with Real. So I'll just say that they do consent. But again, you'll make sure with your your seller, if they're okay with the agency representing the buyer also being from the same broker that you're with. If the home was built after or before 1978, you'll check that respective box. If any of these special circumstances apply, you'll check those respective boxes. Negotiation, I always check that the seller does authorize the broker to assist to the extent of requested by the seller in negotiating the terms. I always indicate does, and they're usually, they have no problems with that. But if they say they don't authorize it, then that's fine as well. All right. And then these are all disclosures, more disclosures, more disclosures. Okay. And then this section here, these are additional GAR pamphlets that you can pull down from transaction desk and send to your client. ABCs of agency is always one of the ones that I always provide. And then protecting the client to protect themselves while selling real property. Those are the two that I always provide. And if any of these other form numbers apply, you'll just research these forms on the search page when we were building the grocery basket, if you will. And there's a mold pamphlet if you want to provide that. But typically, I'll only provide this one and this one. All right. And if there's any other exhibits that you need to apply, if there's a retainer fee that you are requiring as the listing agent, we're in a new world. So this is something that's now going to be potentially part of your business practice is a retainer fee. But again, for time purposes of this video, we're not going to go through any of that. All right. And of course, since I just pulled an old MLS number, it's got the wrong person's information here. As the brokerage, it would be my information that will go here. All right. And then the seller's information would go here. So just like last time, you would go to Authentisign and click there and add the signatures and everything like I showed in the previous section. All right. So we're pretty much done with listing agreements. And we've done offers, how to write an offer. So I hope you're getting value from that. We're at an hour and 21 minutes at this point. I am tired. Give me a sip of water. If you are still here and you were rocking with me, I appreciate you. Make sure that you go ahead and book a call by pinning the link in the first pinned comment to book a call on my calendar. These are the types of trainings that I do very often for agent partners here in Georgia that I work with, but we have an amazing broker team that also does paperwork training. And if you're not getting this type of support and you're having to come to YouTube in the first place to learn how to do paperwork, I would strongly advise you to consider making a pivot to Real Brokerage, just because we are an incredibly collaborative brokerage, and you will not need to have to go to YouTube to watch videos like this, especially if you're partnered with me. You're not going to need to do that. But this is just part of the collaboration, and I want to look out for those agents that are in the trenches trying to make it do what it do, and they're just running into not being able to communicate with their broker. Maybe you're with a boutique brokerage and they're just not really helping you in any way. I don't want you to be stuck out on a limb. So that's why I've created this video, so that you at least know how to get paperwork done in the event that you have a transaction that you need to make do what it do. All right. All right. So lastly here, we're going to do the paperwork. We're almost done here on how to complete a lease listing and representing a lease, a buyer, a renter. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right, you should see it now. All right, I go the same process. I go to transaction desk and then I click create transaction here on the left-hand side. So we're going to call this one Marvin Renter Test. All right. And then let's see here. All right. So if you have a client that is interested in leasing their home that they own, that's what we're going to call this form here. But we're going to also add the forms if you're representing a renter that wants to get a home on a lease here. All right. It just started raining outside randomly, so that's pretty cool. So we're going to call this Marvin Renter Listing and Tenant. All right. All right, template here. We're not gonna click any of these templates here because they don't apply to this type of transaction. The type here is going to be, now the difference here now is going to be residential lease. Okay. The import source is still going to be Georgia MLS. So we'll click that. And again, we're going to use the same property. Oh, let's use another one. Let's use another one here. That's going to be for sale. Excuse me. All right. So I think I found a good one here. Okay. So we're going to say the following property is for sale on Tiger Flowers. This is a beautiful home on Tiger Flowers. All right. So we're going to enter in that MLS number. I'm going to use the wizard here. And I am the listing agent. Well, you know what? I'm going to be both for this transaction because I'm going to show you all the paperwork for both the listing rental and the making an offer as a rental for a rental client. All right. And it's here. So this is the home on Tiger Flowers in Atlanta. So we'll just click next. Listing agents information because I don't want that on there. So again, with your home, your information is going to be the only information that's here as the listing agent and the listing broker. All right. So the forms that we're going to add, we're going to speed through this part because I want to get y'all out of here within 2 hours. All right. So and I'm going to put all this in the description of this video. So now we're doing a lease listing agreement first. That's the bundle we're going to create first. So you're going to need, for every lease listing agreement, you're going to need form F-122. And that's the lease listing agreement form there. I'm going to add that to the basket. You're also going to need form 807, the legal description exhibit. Add that to the grocery basket. And then you're going to also need to pull this home up on GMLS, and you're going to take a printout of the listing. And all you got to do that is, let me unshare my screen here and share this page here. All right. So what we'll do is you'll type in the MLS number. And you can find an old MLS number for that property, but this is a property that's active right now on MLS. So that's why I searched it by the MLS number. But what you'll typically want to do is search it by the address. That way, if there's any old data from when this home was sold previously, it'll automatically pull that information in. But it's for a lease, you're going to need a printout of the MLS listing. Excuse me. And all you need to do is once you've selected it, let me go back in here. All right, found it. Beautiful home here, by the way. You will go down to where it says print reports. Excuse me, and you'll print a full report as a PDF, because that needs to be attached as well to the lease listing agreement. And as I mentioned, you can find an old one and print that information, as long as the information listed in it is still active. It's still accurate, I should say. All right. So going back to the forms, the only documents you need for a lease listing that are GAR forms are form F-122. You might also need form F-125, which is a non-exclusive lease listing agreement, but again, that's going into the weeds. So I don't want to go in the weeds in this video. So we're just going to assume this is exclusive, and you're going to be the only one marketing this listing. So it's going to be form F-122 and form F-807 for the legal description exhibit, as well as a printout of both the listing on GMLS as well as FMLS, again, if it's in a FMLS compulsory area. All right. And if it needs to be termed, you can walk through that. Just get with your broker on the current form for that. All right. So we don't want to close this out. Sorry, I did that in error. All right. So now again, to the same bundle here, just for time purposes, I'm going to show you how to fill out all these. So now these are the two forms in addition to the printouts that I mentioned that are required for a lease listing. Now, if you're representing a renter buyer, the lease form that you're going to need is a tenant brokerage agreement, which is form F-134. Again, this is if you're representing the renter, the buyer. You're also going to need form 934, which is a lease commission confirmation form. You're also going to need form F-913 completed. Okay. If you're also going to need, if the home was built prior to 1978, you're going to need the lead-based paint exhibit. If the home was built prior to 1978, but we're going to assume it was not. But in the event it is, you'll need form F-918. All right. And representing the buyers, you're also going to need to print out the GMLS printout as well as the FMLS printout if required. Okay. And then the other documents that you'll need, again, this is if you are making an offer for your renter buyer client, you'll need a referral agreement, and you'll need to provide a copy of the commission check when you're paid. Another thing to note as well is if a property falls within the compulsory area, the listing brokerage will be charged a one-time FMLS fee if it's in the FMLS compulsory area. If a property falls within a compulsory listing area, there is no additional FMLS fee when the property is leased. Okay, so what that means is if you are listing a property as a leasing area, as a leasing agent, I'm sorry, they will be charged a one-time FMLS fee. And if a property falls within a compulsory listing area, there is no additional FMLS fee when the property is leased. So it's a one-time fee that they're charged. All right. So now we'll click add. So now we have both the lease listing paperwork up here and then the lease buyer paperwork down here. So starting with the lease listing paperwork here, it's very similar to selling a home. You'll enter in today's date as the date of the lease listing. You'll put the owner's name here. You'll verify the address, of course. Then the terms of the leasing agreement, for time purposes, I would suggest that you get with your broker on how to complete this, or get with an agent that has done quite a few lease listings, because I don't want to tell you what to fill out here because it's going to be very nuanced. But what I would do is just touch base with your office. If you're an agent here with Real Broker, pop into Workplace. I don't personally do a whole lot of leases. I haven't done one in a very long time. So I'm not going to try to fill this part out in here. I would pop into Workplace and just say, hey, is there anyone that's done a lease listing? If you're an agent with Real, and just say, I have some questions about what to put in on the lease listing agreement. Okay. Depending on a couple conversations that you need to have with your seller, to see exactly what they want to, lease the property for. And again, an agent that's done quite a few of these will help you create market data information so that the seller has an idea, or the owner of the property has an idea of what rents are in the area and how you should collect your commission, whether it's going to be a percentage of the total rent paid for the first year, or if it's going to be a flat amount. I don't want to talk about that in this particular video for all intents and purposes. I just want to show you where to get the paperwork and how to fill it out, but get with a lease expert at your brokerage. And if you're here with Real, pop into the Georgia Workplace group and get with an agent that's done that to get help on filling that out. It's going to be listed in, same as with a regular single family home listing, GMLS if it applies, and FMLS if it applies. All right. And then once you have completed that section 12 here, again, get with a lease expert within your brokerage to help you fill this section out here. And all of these other fees here, get with a lease expert on what applies to here. I'm the single family guy, so I don't want to tell anyone information that's not accurate. So I would suggest you just get with a lease expert in your brokerage. And again, any brochures that are required typically will be similar forms that are required for the sale of a single family home, just like if there's a retainer fee and all that jazz required. And then again, any special stipulations. But at least you know how to get the forms. You'll have the client sign using Authentisign here once you've completed all of this information, the owner's information, your information here as the lease listing expert. And then you will plug in when this was accepted and acknowledged by your client. Once they've signed, you will plug in that information here. Okay. The day that you receive that information from your client signed. All right. So we're going to save and exit there. And then the legal description exhibit. This is very straightforward. Again, you'll just go into the tax records, county tax records, and plug in all that information here. Very straightforward. And then just like last time, the exhibit, since this is the only other document that's going to be attached to the lease listing agreement, I would just make this exhibit A, and then have your seller because this time it's the seller you're working with. So you'll have them initial here by, of course, clicking this pen symbol and going to Authentisign like I showed you guys in the earlier segment. Now going to the rental buyer or tenant brokerage agreement. We're almost done here. I'm going to get you guys out of here in under 2 hours, if so help me God. All right. So for and in consideration of mutual promises contained in a good value consideration, what I would do again, get with a listing expert here on what to fill out here. You would put your tenant's name here, but as far as what goes into this section here, get with a listing expert or a rental agent expert on what to fill in this section here. I just want to make sure that you have all the forms needed. So your tenant's information will go here, or your client's information will go here, and then you would plug in the date as of today's date, of course, and then the term of the rental representation agreement can be 90 days, 120 days, whatever you want to put here, but you put the start date and then a date that's either 90 or 120 days from this date. As far as your commissions here, again, you'll want to get with a rental expert within your brokerage to see what to put here and here and here and here. Okay. But at least you have the paperwork. And then if there's any special information that you need to plug in here, a rental expert will help you with that. And then the rest of this is just disclosures. And then again, exhibits and special stipulations if they apply. And just like last time, you'll get your client to sign here through Authentisign, print their name. And then, of course, you sign here through Authentisign, put your email, your realtor board membership, where you're with, if it's ARA, NAR, or whomever. Then you send it to Authentisign to sign. All right. And then save and exit. And then the leasing commission confirmation here. This one, again, just like last time, I would get with a leasing expert in your office, and then they will help you fill this part out here. All right, and then have them sign the information. You'll sign the information here on the bottom. That's where you'll put your information there. All right. And then that's pretty much here. So this section here, all of this section here, I would just get with an expert in your office that does this, but you have the form. So that's the most important thing, is that you have the form. And again, just get with a rental expert in your office. I don't do a whole lot of them, so I don't want to tell you what to put here. That's up-to-date information. Okay. But the leasing broker is typically going to be what you put there. For the leasing, the leasing agent, the representative for that agent is what you'll put their information here. And if they are paying a commission, they'll let you know what that commission is going to be. And again, you'll send it off to be signed. But get with an expert in your office on help on how to fill this part out. All right, and lastly is going to be Form F913, and this is the lease for residential property here. Again, this looks very, very similar to an offer, but again, a leasing expert in your team will help you fill this part out. Here at Real, we're very collaborative, so we got a ton of them here that will help with this. I just don't do them, so that's why I don't want to tell you what to plug in here, but a lease expert and or your broker will be able to help you fill out all of the key areas here before you send it off to your client to fill it out. Okay. All right. So this is a lot. It's a lot of information, but again, your broker and other agents in your office will be able to help complete this. If not, again, definitely click the first pinned comment so that we can have a conversation on alignment here with Real, because we got a bunch of them that are rental experts that can help you, that are very knowledgeable. All right, so that was it. I told you guys, I promised to get you out of here in under 2 hours. I'm incredibly tired. I need some water. I need to lay down. But I hope that you got value from this video. I'm going to put timestamps because, again, this was a very long video. So I'm going to put timestamps for all of the sections here that we covered. We covered a listing agreement. We covered a buyer's brokerage representation agreement. We covered how to make an offer on a property, how to write that paperwork up. And we even covered how to create a lease listing agreement and a tenant offer agreement along with the tenant paperwork. So again, if you get value from this and me taking time out of my day to generate this for you, I hope it helps you in a pinch. It's not meant to be a magic bullet. It's just meant to be able to give you the tools and paperwork you need to have on the fly. If you're part of GAMLS, don't forget, you don't need to use DocuSign because your membership in GAMLS gives you access to Authentisign, which is how, as I showed you guys in this video, which is how I got signatures and everything added to the paperwork, and when I'm ready to send it off. If you have any questions about any of these forms, drop them in the comments below. Let me know if this was very helpful for you. And again, I will try to answer as many of these questions as possible. If there's any nuance, then I may tell you to reach out to your managing broker for assistance or your team lead with this. But until the next video, this is your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor signing off. And I am tired. But before you go, there's a video here and there's a video here that YouTube thinks will be very helpful for you. So please, if you enjoy videos like this from the channel, you enjoy videos from your brother, your uncle, your favorite realtor, let's keep the party going and tune into another video. All right, peace.